golf's leagues are the driving force of golf's entertainment. And it is entertainment, and it's wildly entertaining. And I, for one, love it. I call golf at that level all the time a buffet. Take from it what you want, what you consume. Something you love, somebody else thinks is horrible. Okay, it's your buffet. Take what you want. But the prospect, the thought of defining golf's future is driven by the professional tiers is where I have a divide, because golf has, and in my view always will, figure itself out. It's not driven from the top down. It's driven, in my view, from the base level of the game up to the top tier. And I don't know, you guys could tell me better, I guess. I don't know if that's the case in all sports. Obviously, what happens on the top tier, the entertainment level, is going to drive popularity in terms of how people follow the tour, and that can translate. If you look at the history of golf, say, in the United States, when into the late 1800s, the latter half of the 1800s, primarily when you had immigrants coming in from Scotland, some from England, some from Ireland, but primarily Scotland, and they brought their clubs along with them, etc. And they started to introduce golf as a game into the United States. The 5 original clubs in the United States, the original U.S. Open, as it's phrased now, but as it was structured, it was really there for the original U.S. Amateur, but the U.S. Open was an oh, by the way, and it's kind of switched in terms of primary importance. That was at the Newport Country Club in 1895. And then I'm just going to just broad stroke. In 1913, you had effectively Tiger Woods and John Daly and Harry Vardon and Ted Ray of their day, at their prime, touring the United States, and they play in the U.S. Open at Brookline, the country club. And they get beat by a 21-year-old caddy in Francis Ouimet. Well, what that did for the game in the United States was it took a game that was then truly a game for an elitist game. It was. But it took it what they call in the media terms, the historic terms, above the fold. So you think about a newspaper, unfold a newspaper, it brought it above the fold, the top half of that front page. So it was rare for golf to get anywhere near the front page, and now it's at the top half because of that story. And it inspired, and it helped. Latter half of those teens into the 1920s, you had Walter Hagen, you had Gene Sarazen, and then you had the introduction and the emergence of Bobby Jones. Bob Jones, as he preferred to be called, but to the public, he was beloved, and it was part of Grantland Rice's structuring, and they're all part of it. The marketing was Bobby Jones. They loved him. Achieves the Grand Slam in 1930, right as the United States, the world, is thrust into a depression, a time when people wanted and needed heroes, and they found one in the purity of the image of the same from Bobby Jones. Then you had the emergence through, just prior to, through, and after the Second World War. Remember, in 1945, you had Lord Byron Nelson with 11 wins in a row and 18 wins in one season. And again, people will say, well, that was against diluted fields because of people in the Second World War, but they forget that Hogan and Snead were amongst those players that were already back by then. So you can't take away from Byron Nelson how remarkable what he achieved was, and that beautiful golf swing that was really timeless. But that triumvirate, the American triumvirate of Nelson and Ben Hogan and Sam Snead, all of whom were born in the year 1912, defined golf through that period at its highest levels, really right up into the late 50s and into the early 60s. Then who emerged at that time? Arnold Palmer. Arnold Palmer came to the game right when television discovered the game of golf. And who starred as its matinee idol? The good-looking kid from Western Pennsylvania with that million-watt smile and a go-for-broke golf game. Did he inspire? You better believe it, he inspired. Early 1960s, the world is introduced to Jack Nicklaus. Jack Nicklaus would redefine the game. Jack Nicklaus, to me, is as significant to the game of golf. He rises above the game of golf in terms of his significance, because I believe that Jack Nicklaus would have been a champion in any era in which he competed, including today. Right? Because when you compare eras, you always bump into that. Would Babe Ruth be a great baseball player in today's world? A great hitter, if you want to define it more specifically, right? And you could have a huge debate about that. Speed, fitness, et cetera, et cetera. There's all kinds of different ways you could approach it. Jack Nicklaus was different. The ground force power that he generated when he smashed into a golf ball was something that I believe would have been universal even today. And it even surprises me to this day that there's not more people teaching a Jack Nicklaus golf swing. And from that Nicklaus era, which you could define from 1962, when he took down Arnold Palmer in a playoff at the U.S. Open at Oakmont, literally in the backyard of Arnold Palmer, right? And he survived the taunts and everything else that went with Fat Jack back in those days, et cetera, into the late 60s, early 1970s, when he got lean, but he still had that same golf swing, powerful as all get out, that same mind, and it carried him until his last major championship at the Masters in 1986. And during that span, the players that competed against those two, including most prominently, of course, Gary Player, golf's first true global golf star, all the way through. All those players that they faced, all those Hall of Famers that they faced, all those multiple-time major champions that they faced, right up through and to. And that brought us into now the late 80s, early 90s. Wasn't a big span. It's remarkable when you think about it, from Jack Nicklaus to the introduction of Tiger Woods. But during that span, you had the likes of Tom Watson continued to be a force. You had Tom Kite in there. Of course, I could go through so many Hall of Famers that had an impact. Davis Love III, with his contention in many majors, winning a major in his own right. Justin Leonard did during that time. Of course, Nick Price, multiple ones from Greg Norman, and so many weeks as world number one. That was all that era, right? And I'm broad brushing, so forgive me if I'm not hitting your favorite here or there. Until we were introduced to Tiger Woods in the late 1990s. And so when we had Davis Love III on recently, I asked him about this evolution that brought us into the modern day of the game at its highest tiers and how that relates to participation in the game. Here's what Davis Love III had to say about some of these gents I just mentioned.
Well, I remember, I was working with Butch Harmon for a while, and I remember in LA one time when Tiger was playing as an amateur, I said, "Hey, how's the kid doing?" And he goes, "Oh, he can't hit a wedge the right distance." He goes, "But when he figures out how to hit his wedges the right distance, you guys won't be able to beat him." And I said, "Come on, Butch. He's not that good." And Butch's like, "Oh, yeah, he's that good." So, of course, Tiger figured out how to control the distance on his short irons eventually, and we couldn't beat him. But like Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus, Tiger brought a whole new generation of fans, of players, of now tour players to the game. And, you can argue Tiger, Jack, Arnie, all you want, but those three guys made golf popular and fun and exciting and cool. Fred Couples added a lot of cool in there too, but you can't put it past Tiger, because he, with the modern technology of golf broadcasts, he made golf what it is today. And, hopefully we get to see a lot more of him. I love watching him and Charlie and the father-son, but I'd sure like to watch him in Augusta this April.